The final cloud of damp earth had been patted onto my grandfather Henry Whitford's grave at Ashvale Cemetery, and the small crowd of mourners had dissolved back into their warm cars, eager to escape the biting October wind. I remained, a solitary figure in black, my fingers wrapped tight around the single object he'd left directly to me. A heavy rust-pocked iron key to his old backyard shed felt cold and final in my palm. A piece of a life that was now just memories and objects. My mother, Loretta, sighed, her breath a plume of white in the frigid air. She pulled her coat tighter, her gaze flicking dismissively toward the key. "Grandpa's junk," she murmured. The words meant to be a statement of fact, not cruelty. To her, it was just remnants of a failed hobby taking up space in our HOA neighborhood. My stepfather, Calvin Rowe, stood beside her, a smirk playing on his lips that never reached his eyes. He saw opportunity where my mother saw clutter. He produced a folded document from his inner coat pocket and a pen. "Lena," he said, his voice a low, persuasive rumble, "a consent form to clear out that eyesore shed. The HOA compliance crew can haul it all away as scrap. We'll split the proceeds." I said nothing. I didn't look at the paper. Instead, my mind went to a phantom ache deep in my ribs, a ghost of bruises from years ago. His lessons, he called them. I called them the reason I never turned my back on him. I simply took the pen, folded the paper without looking, and slid both into my own pocket. His smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. The reading of the will was a stuffy affair in the town lawyer's wood-paneled office, smelling of old paper and furniture polish. The lawyer droned through the legal jargon. My mother and Calvin got the main house. My half-sister Ava got a trust fund. Then came my name. To my granddaughter Lena Stratton I leave exclusive use rights to the backyard shed on the north corner of the Ridgeway lot, the structure situated upon it, and all its contents, including but not limited to the steel trellising, the inventory of oak barrels, and the framed map of the old vineyard plot. A ripple of stifled laughter went through the room. Calvin coughed into his fist to hide a grin. "Old man Whitford's wine hobby died with the last century," he'd always say. He wasn't entirely wrong. Grandpa's small batch vines had withered after a blight in the late 90s. The barrels were assumed empty or full of vinegar. The lawyer handed me the rolled-up map tied with a faded ribbon. As I unrolled it, a faint scent of earth and fermented fruit rose from the parchment. My family saw a useless drawing of a dirt patch. I saw Grandpa's precise architectural handwriting. And in the bottom right corner, a tiny notation in faint pencil, almost invisible, 3 letters and 2 words. DOI, Rook Valley. It was an acronym I knew from my paralegal work, Declaration of Intent. But Rook Valley didn't have a published geographical indication. It was a whisper of a possibility. Eva, ever the documentarian of her own life, pulled out her phone. "Got to get a shot of the ashes of the past for my story," she said, her voice dripping with condescending sympathy. She framed a picture of the dusty map in my hands. While her flash went off, I angled my own phone low and took a quick high-resolution photo of the entire map, making sure the pencil notation was crystal clear. That evening the house was thick with the cloying scent of lilies from the funeral and the tension of unspoken resentments. Calvin found me in the hallway. He blocked my path, his bulk filling the narrow space. "The key. Lena," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's mine," I replied, voice even. "Don't be difficult. It's a family asset. The HOA is already sending violation notices about that shed being an eyesore. We need to liquidate before Karen Voss starts stacking fines. The will said it's mine to use. That doesn't sound like liquidation." He took a step closer, his shadow engulfing me. That old familiar scent of his whiskey-laced cologne filled my nostrils. He lowered his voice. "You've been away for a while. Maybe you forgot how things work around here. Give me the key." I took a deliberate step back, my hand finding the cold comfort of my phone in my pocket. My thumb instinctively swiped and tapped, bringing up 911 on the screen. I didn't press it. I just let him see the screen's glow reflect in my eyes. The power equation had shifted. He saw it. His jaw tightened. After a long, charged silence, he stepped aside. I didn't run to my room. I walked. I closed the door, turned the lock, and leaned against the solid wood. My heart hammered. I waited until my breathing returned to normal before I moved. I spread the old map across my desk under the bright, focused light of a lamp. The paper was brittle. The ink faded in places. But there it was. A thin line drawn in startlingly vibrant blue ink leading from the main shed to a section of the backyard labeled Block H. And next to it, 2 words in Grandpa's hand, foxglove cuttings. It meant nothing to me then. I powered on my laptop. A strange premonition guided my fingers. I logged into my old email account and typed my grandfather's name into the search bar. One result popped up. An email sent a decade ago. Subject line, Whitford Vine, Project Phoenix. There was no text in the body, just a single scanned document attached. A geological survey of the North Ridgeway Bench detailing its unique soil composition. Volcanic tuff and clay loam. Perfect for high-stress viticulture. Project. Comeback. A phoenix to rise from the ashes of the blight. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. They would not sell his dream for HOA-approved scrap. They would not call his life's work junk ever again. The next morning I was at the bank when it opened. I closed my savings account. $18,700. My entire future. My escape plan, liquidated into a cashier's check. By noon I was at my lawyer's office putting down a retainer. I need you to register an LLC for me, Stratton Shed LLC. She raised an eyebrow but took my check. The pieces were moving. The foundation was being laid. I spent the rest of the day running on caffeine and adrenaline. I drove out to the Ridgeway property. The shed loomed like a sleeping giant at the end of the gravel path behind the house. The iron key felt different now, not an artifact of the past but a tool for the future. The following morning my phone rang. An unknown number with a local area code. Hello. Am I speaking with the representative of the Henry Whitford estate? The voice was professional, male, carrying an undercurrent of serious inquiry. This is his granddaughter, Lena Stratton. I'm the executor for part of his estate. There was a brief pause. Ms. Stratton, my name is David Thorne. I'm with the Rook Valley Vineyard Association. We've been trying to locate your grandfather's records for some time. We'd like to have a conversation with you regarding his collection of foxglove cuttings. The call from the Rook Valley Vineyard Association had been a key turning in a lock I didn't even know I held. David Thorne's words, astronomical value, living history, echoed in my head as I drove the gravel path home. The iron key felt heavy in my hand. No longer a relic but a detonation pin. The shed lock was a solid oxidized block of metal. It hadn't been opened in at least a decade. It took my full body weight, a screaming metallic grate that set my teeth on edge before the mechanism finally turned with a heavy thunk. The corrugated steel door was a beast. I had to plant my feet and heave, the rattling roar echoing across the manicured lawns as it slowly revealed a cavern of shadow. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the damp rot of mildew or the sharp tang of vinegar I'd been warned about. It was glorious. The deep sweet vanilla of aged oak, the dusty savory scent of tanned leather, and a faint crystalline shimmer of tartrates. It was the smell of patience. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light from the door, illuminating a lost museum. Rows upon rows of oak barrels stacked 3 high, each one stenciled in faded black paint. Whitford 1987, 1992, 1998. A silent, sleeping army. My heart hammered. Calvin and my mother saw HOA violation scrap. I was looking at a time capsule. I made my way to the back, past silent stainless steel tanks and a dusty web-covered bottling line, to the small glass-paned office. Grandpa's desk was just as he'd left it, and on top a thick dark brown leather-bound notebook. I opened it, his handwriting as precise as an architect's filled every page. This wasn't a diary. It was a manual. It was his life's work. Page after page of diagrams of 110R rootstock, notes on bench grafting, meticulous hand-drawn schedules for a manual drip irrigation system he'd clearly built himself, soil pH readings from 1994. And then I found it, a page titled simply Field Blend 4. It was a recipe, a complex list of percentages, co-fermentation notes, and yeast strains. Tucked inside the fold of that very page, as if left for someone to find, was a single sheet of paper not from the notebook. It was a typed letter on expensive bond paper dated 2003. The letterhead read North Lake Brae Compliance. Henry, it began. You were right to pull out. The awards are being bought. I'm seeing fake labels. Doctored blends. North Lake Brae is signing off on anything for a price. Be careful who you trust with your legacy. This place isn't what it was. It was signed Eli Navarro, winemaker. I'd never heard the name, but I had a sudden ice-cold premonition of who he was warning my grandfather against. I continued my search of the desk. In the top drawer, beneath a stack of invoices for French oak staves, was a small velvet-lined box. It didn't hold a ring. It held seals. Dozens of small intricate silver foil seals embossed with a stylized W intertwined with a rising bird. A phoenix. W Phoenix. These were the labels for his comeback. Project Phoenix. The ones he never got to use. The sight of that seal unlocked a memory I had force-buried for a decade. I was 22, home from college for the summer, sitting at the kitchen table. I'd been helping with Grandpa Henry's finances after his first major stroke. I had found discrepancies. Money from his pension fund diverted, checks written to something called the Roe Heritage Fund from his hospital account. I had printed the statements, my hands shaking with young righteous fury. I'd confronted my mother, laying the papers out on the table. He's stealing from Grandpa. Mom, this is fraud. Loretta hadn't even looked at the papers. She had just turned from the sink, her hands dripping, her face pale. Lena, please, don't dig up the past. You don't know what you'll stir up. Calvin keeps this family stable. He pays the bills. Just let it be. He's paying the bills with Grandpa's money. Lena, stop. Her voice was sharp, desperate. I had stopped. I had buried the evidence and my anger and left for a job 3 states away. Standing in this cold, silent shed, I realized stable was just another word for silent. I had let her fear and Calvin's intimidation define my grandfather's final years. No more. I stepped back out into the sharp air, my mind racing. I called David Thorne at the Vineyard Association back. My voice was different now, harder. Mr. Thorne. Lena Stratton. I'm at the shed. I found my grandfather's notes. He mentions foxglove cuttings and field blend 4. What exactly are we talking about? I could hear the excitement crackle through the phone. Ms. Stratton, you don't understand. Foxglove is a legend. It's a pre-phylloxera heritage varietal thought to be completely wiped out in America. The last known cuttings were rumored to be in your grandfather's possession, but he went dark after 99. If what you have is authentic, the collector value is astronomical. It's not just wine. It's living history. Living history. Calvin had called it Grandpa's junk. I need it verified, I said, my voice low. Who is the best? Rook Valley College. Their viticulture and enology lab is world-class. Ask for Dr. Aries. But Lena, be careful. If this is real, a lot of people will want it. And some may not want it to be real at all. As if on cue my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Eva. Of course. She'd posted a video, A selfie-style clip of her laughing, clearly taken at the funeral reception. The caption: officially saying goodbye to Grandpa's haunted shed. LOL. So much junk. Anyone want a rusty barrel? Past the past ghost wine. I felt the familiar flash of rage. But before I could close the app, a new message request popped up. A blank profile, no picture, no followers, one line: be careful. The junk is the prize. Someone has been selling off foxglove cuttings to Calvin's fund for years. My blood went cold. Calvin's fund, the same Roe Heritage Fund from 10 years ago. He hadn't just been stealing Grandpa's pension. He'd been stealing his legacy plant by plant and selling it off the books. Ava's junk was his private cash cow. I tore through the office again, this time with new frantic energy. Tucked in the back of a filing cabinet in a mislabeled folder was a small wooden cigar box. Inside, not cigars, but a stack of files. There it was, a contract dated 1998, an agreement for the exclusive transfer of all rootstock and cuttings, specifically the foxglove varietal, from Henry Whitford to the Roe Heritage Fund. My heart stopped. He'd done it. He'd stolen it all. Until I looked at the signature line. Calvin's signature was there, a bold, arrogant scroll. But the line for Henry Whitford was blank. My grandfather had never signed it. He knew even then. He knew not to trust him. The contract was worthless. It was just a draft, a failed attempt. This shed wasn't just a shed. It was an arsenal. I sat down on the dusty office chair, the puzzle pieces clicking into place. This was a crime scene and a gold mine. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. My paralegal training took over. Thumbs flying. Plan, inventory. Secure full asset inventory. Every barrel, every bottle, every piece of equipment, photograph and videotape everything. New locks, change the main lock tonight. Order an IoT smart lock with remote access alerts. Install battery-powered, motion-activated cameras in the office and over the barrels. Verify. I immediately emailed Rook Valley College's viticulture lab. I scheduled a field visit for them to take core samples from the barrels and, if possible, DNA samples from any dormant vines I could find in Block H. I needed to prove scientifically that this was foxglove. Evidence protocol. All family conversations recorded. My phone was now a weapon. All files, the map, the email, the DM, the contract scanned and backed up to multiple secure cloud servers. The insider, find Eli Navarro. I did a quick search. He was no longer a corporate suit at North Lake Bray. He ran a small independent wine consulting firm. Highly respected, notoriously discreet. I sent him an email from my new Stratton Shed LLC account. My name is Lena Stratton, Henry Whitford's granddaughter. I found your letter from 2003. I need to understand what happened. Can we meet? He replied in under 5 minutes. Town Square Cafe tomorrow, 8 a.m. I closed the leather notebook. The smell of oak and old secrets clinging to my hands. Calvin wanted to sell this place for HOA scrap. He thought he was dealing with the scared girl he could push around. He was about to deal with the woman who held the receipts. The Town Square Cafe was all exposed brick and the comforting sharp scent of roasting coffee. It was 7:59 a.m. I'd been there for 15 minutes. My nerves stretched taut. My phone on the table recording audio. 8 a.m. On the dot, the bell over the door chimed. He didn't look like a corporate whistleblower. He looked like the earth. Eli Navarro was maybe in his late 40s with a face weathered by sun and worry. The back of his denim work shirt was dusted with the pale dry powder of a cellar, and his hands wrapped around a simple black coffee were permanently stained with the deep purple of tannins. He slid into the booth opposite me, his eyes assessing me with an unnerving quiet intensity. Lena Stratton, I said, extending a hand. He met it. His grip was firm, dry, and calloused. Eli, you found the letter. It was a statement, not a question. I did. I said. And the Phoenix seals and the map and an unsigned contract from 1998 trying to transfer the foxglove cuttings to my stepfather Calvin Rowe. Eli's expression didn't change, but a muscle in his jaw tightened. He took a slow sip of his coffee. He's been waiting a long time for that. Your grandfather was a smart man. Stubborn but smart. He knew Calvin was a snake. You warned him about fake labels at North Lake Bray. I did, Eli said, his gaze dropping to the dark liquid in his cup. I was young. I was idealistic. I thought compliance meant compliance. North Lake Bray was the biggest compliance firm in the valley. They certified everything. Calvin Rowe was one of their biggest clients before he even married your mother. He was building his Rowe Heritage Fund, buying up distressed properties, middling vineyards, and selling fake wine. I finished for him. Eli looked up, his eyes locking on mine. 5 years ago, the Rook Valley Gold Medal Vintage, a Cabernet that stunned everyone. To put Calvin on the map as a serious player. It won awards, got 94 points from the critics. It was a complete fake. The air in my lungs felt thin. What was it? Sugar-blended bulk juice from the Central Valley. Glycerol, tartaric acid, oak chips, a chemical cocktail designed to fool a panel for 10 minutes. He'd bought a Real struggling vineyard, swapped the labels, and paid North Lake Bray to certify the batch as 100% Rook Valley estate grown. I found the lab reports, the real ones. When I confronted my boss, I was told to focus on the big picture. I quit the next day. And Calvin got away with it. He got away with it, Eli confirmed, his voice flat. And he's been dining out on that reputation ever since, using that gold medal as leverage to build his fund, to get investors. He's a house of cards, Lena. But it's a big house. I pushed the leather-bound notebook across the table. My grandfather called it Project Phoenix. Eli's rough fingers traced the embossed cover. He opened it, his eyes scanning the precise handwriting, the diagrams. He was a different man now. The tired cynicism fell away, replaced by something like reverence. He stopped on the page for field blend for, his finger hovering over the list of percentages. My God, he whispered. He was really going to do it. He gently touched the faint W Phoenix symbol drawn in the margin. He was planning this in 1999, a complete relaunch. He knew the foxglove was special. He knew the blight didn't get the roots on Block H. He was going to use the 110R rootstock to bring it back. He was going to rewrite the story of this valley. Then he got sick and Calvin took over his finances. I said the words tasting like acid and started his heritage fund. Henry shut him out of the shed, Eli said. He must have known, but he couldn't stop him from the rest. And now you have the key. He looked at me, the assessment back in his eyes. But this time it was different. It was a question. If this foxglove is real, if those barrels are sound and those cuttings are viable, you don't just have a curiosity. You have a weapon. You have the truth. And a lot of powerful people, starting with your stepfather and that HOA president Karen Voss who keeps sending you violation notices, will want to bury it and you with it. As if summoned, my phone vibrated on the table. The audio recording app minimized as the call screen appeared. Ava Rowe. Eli glanced at the name and raised an eyebrow. I took a breath, held up one finger, and tapped accept. I put the call on speaker. Lena. Hey. Ava's voice was a high syrupy sweet confection. The voice she used when she wanted something. I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, I was just talking with Calvin and we were thinking about you all alone having to deal with that mess at the shed. It's not a mess. Ava, I said, my voice cool. Oh, sweetie, don't be proud. It's junk. We all know it. And we just feel so bad that it all got dumped on you. So good news. Calvin has an HOA compliance guy who can clear the entire thing out by Friday. Barrels, tanks, everything. And we're going to give you a cut. Of course, 20% just for being a good sport. My eyes met Elias. He was motionless, his face a mask of stone. 20%. A cut of the scrap. They weren't just lowballing me. They were trying to liquidate the evidence before I knew what I had. No thank you, Eva. I'm handling it. The sweetness in her voice curdled. Just a fraction. Handling it? How? Lena? Zashed. You're a paralegal. What are you going to do? File a brief at it. She laughed. A brittle sharp sound. Don't be difficult. It's a family asset. The will says it's my asset, Eva. And I'm not liquidating. A long loaded sigh came through the speaker. Look, I'm trying to be nice here. You're making things complicated. Calvin is just trying to help. And Karen Voss on the HOA board agrees, the shed is a neighborhood eyesore. I don't need his help, I said. Fine. Be that way. Another beat of silence. Then the sweetness returned, thicker and more artificial. Let's just talk like a family face to face. Come over for dinner tonight. We can sort this all out. Just us. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. I looked at Eli. His expression was grim. Don't go alone, he said. Don't go at all if you can help it. But if you do, don't go alone and don't drink anything you didn't open yourself. The warning hung in the air, cold and heavy. This was not a family dispute. This was a war. She called it a family asset. Calvin is trying to claim it. The unsigned contract. It's not enough, but it shows intent. He'll try to prove Grandpa was incompetent, that he'd agreed to it verbally. He'll try. Eli agreed. But you have the notebook and you have the barrels. The truth is in the wine. Lena, if it's sound. I have a lab team from Rook Valley College meeting there this afternoon, I said. DNA and core samples. Good, he said, nodding. You're moving fast. That's your only advantage. He pushed his cup away and stood. I have to get to a client. But here. He scribbled a number on a napkin. My cell. Call me when the lab is done. I want to know what they find. He paused, his hand on the back of the booth. And Lena, your grandfather was a good man. Don't let the bastards win. He left, the bell chiming his exit, leaving me alone with the check and a head full of new dangers. I spent the next hour in a hardware store. I bought a heavy-duty padlock and hasp. And in the electronics aisle I bought a 4-pack of AirTags. When I got to the shed I didn't use the old iron key. I cut the rusted lock off with bolt cutters. Inside the air was still and cold. I went to the office and took the heavy old-fashioned key ring that held the keys to the cellar door and the desk. I threaded one of the small white AirTags onto the ring. If Calvin or Ava or Karen's compliance crew wanted to help, I wanted to know exactly where my keys were. I secured the new lock on the outside and activated the motion-sensing cameras I'd placed the night before. My phone buzzed. This time it was a text. My mother, Lena, please don't make this difficult. Calvin is just trying to get the house stabilized. We have bills. He's trying to help. And Karen says the fines start tomorrow if that shed isn't cleared. The old familiar guilt twisted in my stomach. The guilt of the child responsible for the parents' peace. But it was weaker this time, strangled by a cold hard anger. I typed back, my thumbs moving with precision. Stabilize means transparent. I'm getting the assets appraised. That's final. I didn't give her time to respond. I silenced my phone and went to meet the lab team. They were a pair of serious-looking graduate students, all business and sterile equipment. They were visibly excited, peppering me with questions about the foxglove rumor. I just pointed them to Block H and the barrels. They took core samples from the barrels, drilling tiny holes and sealing the wine in vials. They took scrapings from the staves in the overgrown wild mess of Block H. They found what I'd missed. Dormant gnarled vines, almost dead but not quite. They took samples of the wood, handling them like holy relics. The weight was agonizing. 2 days of silence. 2 days of me jumping at every text. My cameras showing no movement at the shed. 2 days of me poring over my grandfather's notes, cross-referencing them with the unlabeled contract, building a timeline of Calvin's greed. Then the email came. The subject line was Vlab SSR Marker Report WH001 Foxglove Inquiry. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely click it open. It was a PDF, a dense scientific report filled with charts. But I didn't need to read the charts. I just needed the summary. Preliminary analysis of the wood cuttings from Block H and the barrel core samples show a definitive match. The SSR simple sequence repeat markers are consistent with archived prephyloxera profiles of the varietal known as foxglove. While further sequencing is required, our lab confirms a 92% probability match. The wine in the barrels, while aged, appears to be remarkably sound. I read it 3 times. 92% probability. Remarkably sound. It was real. It was all real. My grandfather hadn't left me junk. He'd left me a miracle. He'd left me the truth preserved in oak and alcohol. I was still staring at the report, my heart thundering when a second email notification popped up. This one wasn't from a lab. The sender's address made my breath catch. It was from the General Counsel of the Rook Valley Reserve, the most prestigious, exclusive, and expensive vineyard in the entire region. The one whose name was synonymous with impossible-to-get 100-point wines. Subject: the Whitford Estate Foxglove Varietal. MS. Stratton. We have been made aware by our colleagues at Rook Valley College that you may be in possession of viable foxglove genetic material and potentially barreled wine. This is, as you may know, a matter of significant historical interest to our valley. Rook Valley Reserve would be interested in discussing the possibility of an exclusive distribution partnership pending verification of the samples. We are prepared to make a significant offer to see the samples in person at your earliest convenience. I leaned back in my chair, the email glowing on the screen. A laugh escaped me, a short, sharp, incredulous sound. Calvin wanted to sell this for HOA scrap metal. Ava wanted to give me a 20% cut. Karen Voss wanted it gone to keep her perfect neighborhood. I was holding a legend. I was holding a multi-million-dollar secret. And I was just starting to see how big this game really was. The email from Rook Valley Reserve, combined with the 92% probability from the lab, shifted everything. The game was no longer about protecting junk. It was about launching a counteroffensive. My paralegal training, the years I'd spent organizing discovery and prepping for litigation, snapped into focus. This was no longer a family drama. This was a case, and I was going to build it brick by brick until it was airtight. My first move was to establish an unbreakable chain of custody. The lab team had been professional, but now I had to treat the shed as a high-value contested asset. I returned with a digital scale, tamper-evident evidence bags, a label maker, and my high-resolution camera. I started with the samples I'd taken for myself. Alongside the lab, I photographed each vial against a neutral background with a card displaying the date, time, and barrel number. I weighed each one to the gram, logged it, sealed it in a bag, and then sealed the bag. Every action was methodical. I was creating a fortress of procedure. If Calvin or Karen Voss ever tried to claim in court that I had tampered with the wine or fabricated the discovery, I would have a time-stamped, unassailable log of every step. Next I moved to the paper, my grandfather's notebook, the unsigned contract, Eli's letter. I didn't just scan them to the cloud. I photographed each page front and back with a ruler in the frame for scale, capturing the texture of the paper, the fiber, the faint pencil marks. I handled them with nitrile gloves. I then sealed the originals in waterproof, fire-resistant document bags. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. With the physical evidence secured, I moved on to the financial. Calvin's power was built on a lie. Eli had confirmed it. Now I had to prove it. I spent what felt like an audacious amount of my remaining savings, but it was the most critical investment I could make. I hired Hollis Searle, a forensic accounting firm with a reputation for shredding corporate veils. "I need you to find the Roe Heritage Fund," I told Mr. Searle, a man with steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they could see through lead. "I believe it's been used for at least a decade to launder money, specifically from the fraudulent sale of wine and the illegal sale of stolen viticultural assets. I have an unsigned contract from 1998 and an anonymous tip. I need you to follow the money from every award Calvin Roe ever won to every asset he's ever acquired." Searle didn't smile. He simply nodded, a thin, satisfied press of his lips. "We find things, Ms. Stratton. That's what we do." While they began their digital excavation, I turned to the land itself. The DOI notation on my grandfather's map was my next target. I went to the county clerk and then to the state viticultural board. I filed the preliminary paperwork for a new provisional subappellation, Rook Valley North Bench. I used my grandfather's geological survey, the Project Phoenix email, as the primary evidence. It was a long shot, a mountain of red tape, but the filing itself was a legal shot across the bow. It publicly staked a claim that the land on the North Bench was unique, that it was special, and that it belonged to the Whitford estate. It prevented Calvin from trying to absorb it into one of his generic Rook Valley holdings, and it gave me ammunition against Karen Voss's uniformity rules. Then I went after the barrels. They were contents, not real estate. I filed a UCC-1 financing statement listing Stratton Shed LLC as the secured party and the sealed inventoried oak barrels, 1987 to 1998 Whitford Estate Foxglove varietal, as the collateral. This legal filing created a public record of my lien on the barrels. If Calvin tried to send his compliance guy to seize them, a simple lien search would show they were legally encumbered by my LLC. It was a tripwire. Next, insurance. My homeowner's policy was useless against HOA liens. I made a call to a specialty broker. "I need a policy for a private collection of collector's barrels. Yes, barreled wine. No, I can't disclose the varietal just yet. I need coverage for theft, fire, and malicious damage. The value is speculative. Let's start the floor at $2 million and work up pending appraisal." The silence on the other end of the line was deeply satisfying. The policy was exorbitant, but it was another layer of armor. With the legal and financial walls going up, I returned to the physical. The new padlock was a deterrent, but I needed data. I installed small battery-powered magnetic sensors on the main shed door and the inner cellar door, all linked to my phone. Any separation of the contacts and I would get an instant alert. I placed 2 more motion-activated cameras in what I identified as the primary blind spots. And then I set a trap. It felt old school, almost theatrical. But Eli had warned me about Calvin's brazenness, and Karen's willingness to look the other way. I went to a specialty store and bought a small tub of high-potency invisible UV detection paste. I wiped a thin, undetectable layer on the handle of the cellar door, on the lock of the filing cabinet, and on the lids of the 3 most accessible barrels in the front row. If anyone touched them without authorization, their hands would light up like a crime scene under a black light. My alliance with Eli needed to be formalized. I met him back at the cafe, but this time I brought a document. "I need you as a consultant. I can't pay you what you're worth, not yet. But I can offer a percentage of the Phoenix project if and when it materializes." He looked at the paper. It wasn't just a consulting agreement. It was a mutual non-disclosure agreement binding both of us to total secrecy. He signed it without hesitation. "You're not just protecting the wine, are you?" he said, sliding the paper back to me. "You're building a gallows." "I'm building a case," I replied. "And I need your expertise. I need to know what's in those barrels, Eli. Not just the DNA. I need to know the state of the wine." From that day we started the cellar log. The shed became a living entity. We took temperature and humidity readings 3 times a day. Eli, with the reverence of a museum curator, carefully unbunged a single barrel, one from 1996, and siphoned a tiny sample. We tested the free SO2 levels. They were miraculously still present, meaning the wine was protected. He measured the angel's share, the small amount of evaporation, to calculate the ullage and potential for oxidation. He knew what he was doing, Eli murmured, his nose deep in the glass. The structure, it's still here, Lena. Sleeping, but it's here. Now it was time to plan the reveal. I couldn't just announce it. That would give Calvin and Karen time to spin a narrative. I had to let the wine speak for itself in an environment I controlled. I drafted an email list, the top 3 wine critics from the local papers, a sommelier from a high-end restaurant in the city, and the head of the Rook Valley Vineyard Association. The invitation was intentionally vague. Stratton Shed LLC invites you to a private preliminary tasting of a unique historical restoration project, a blind flight of heritage wines. Your discretion is requested. I set the date for 2 weeks out. No name, no varietal, just mystery. To bottle that mystery, I placed an order. Not for standard bottles. I ordered 200 units of special inert dark glass bottles designed for archival purposes, and with them 200 high-grade custom lot corks. Each one microscopically numbered and traceable. When we bottled the Phoenix for that tasting, the chain of custody would extend to the cork itself. Finally, I secured the heart of the operation, the leather notebook, the lab report, the original copy of the unsigned contract, and the Hollis Searle retainer. I couldn't leave them in the office. I couldn't even take them home. Behind a loose panel of siding in the shed office there was a small dark void. It was just deep enough. I bought a small fireproof lockbox, secured the documents inside, and slid it into the wall. I nailed the panel shut with the original rusty nails. It was invisible. I went home, my hands aching, my brain buzzing with legal clauses and contingency plans. I sat at my laptop and opened a new document. Confrontation script, C. O. K. Boss. I started typing out scenarios. The Calvin blocks the door. Do not engage. State you are unlawfully detaining me and call 911. Record. If Ava feigns ignorance. Present evidence of her Instagram post. Ask, how did you know it was junk? Record. If Karen demands entry, state you are trespassing on private property leased by my LLC. I am ordering you to leave. Record. If Mom calls crying, state, I am doing what is legally and morally right. I am protecting my inheritance. I am not open to discussing this. I was scripting the end of my family, and for the first time I felt no fear, only the cold, clean focus of a plan coming together. The dinner was a calculated ambush, and I walked in with my eyes wide open. The scent of roasted garlic and rosemary meant to evoke warmth, and family felt cloying and false. My mother Loretta met me at the door. Her smile stretched thin over a foundation of anxiety. Calvin stood in the archway to the dining room, a glass of red wine in his hand, playing the part of the benevolent patriarch. Lena, glad you came to your senses, he said, his voice a smooth, deep purr. We can sort this all out. No need for lawyers and unpleasantness, and Karen Voss agrees the neighborhood would be better without that shed. I said nothing, just offered a tight, neutral smile and took my seat. The table was set with the good china, a performance. I deliberately chose the chair with the clearest path to the front door. The small talk was excruciating. Ava prattled on about a new yoga studio. Calvin pontificated about a local zoning issue. My mother fluttered around refilling water glasses and asking bright, empty questions. I kept my answers short, my fork moving food around my plate. I was a guest in a foreign country, wary of the local customs. Calvin waited until my mother had served the dessert, a perfect apple crumble, before he made his move. He leaned forward, his elbows on the polished mahogany table, his expression a careful construction of paternal concern. "Lena, I understand you're feeling sentimental about your grandfather's things. It's natural. But that shed, it's a liability. It's unsafe. The HOA insurance company was just telling Karen Voss." He let the sentence hang. An unspoken threat of financial ruin. He reached across the table, not to take my hand but to place his large manicured one on the tablecloth a few inches from my arm. It was a casual gesture of ownership, of territory, a reminder of his physical presence and the power dynamic he had enforced for years, now backed by Karen's clipboard. I didn't flinch. I simply shifted my weight, moving my chair back an inch on the hardwood floor. The quiet scrape of wood on wood was the only sound. "What I propose is a partnership," he continued, either ignoring or not registering my subtle retreat. "A co-ownership. I have capital. I have contacts. I can invest in the property. Bring the shed up to code. Make it a real functioning asset. We keep it in the family. We honor your grandfather's memory by making it profitable, not letting it rot, and keeping Karen happy." He smiled. A magnanimous leader of the family smile. This was the trap. He wasn't trying to steal it for scrap anymore. He was trying to legally absorb it, to get his name on the deed, to make my inheritance his with Karen's blessing. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. I set the glass down with a soft click. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table between us. The screen was on, the audio recording app's waveform pulsing with the ambient sound of the room. "I'm willing to discuss the future of the assets," I said, my voice as calm and level as a legal dictation. "Under one condition. A full independent forensic audit of all your wine-related transactions for the past 5 years, including every dollar in and out of the Roe Heritage Fund." The air in the room instantly became thin and cold. The performance was over. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Ava's eyes widened, her fork frozen halfway to her lips. Calvin's paternal mask didn't just slip. It shattered. His face hardened. The affable host replaced by the cornered predator I knew so well. "You want transparency, Lena?" Ava jumped in, her voice sharp and defensive. She fumbled with her own phone. "What about this?" She turned the screen toward me. It was a photo of me from the day I'd gone to the shed with the bolt cutters, in the middle of snapping the old rusted lock. "You broke in. You're talking about audits. You're the one committing a crime, and Karen Voss has the violation photos." I didn't even look at her. I looked at Calvin. I reached into my bag again and pulled out a folded document. I laid it on the table next to my phone. "This is a copy of my notarized inventory log witnessed by a representative from Rook Valley College. It's dated to the hour I took legal possession of the property as per my grandfather's will. What you call breaking in the law calls securing a contested asset. Eva, you should look it up. That's when he broke." Calvin slammed his fist down on the table. The china jumped. The silverware clattered and red wine sloshed violently over the rim of his glass, staining the white tablecloth like a fresh wound. It wasn't a calculated move. It was pure uncontrolled rage. The loss of his narrative. My mother flinched as if she'd been struck. "Lena, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Stop it. Don't cause trouble." Her plea wasn't to him the source of the violence. It was to me the source of the truth. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The room was silent except for the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "I'm not the one causing trouble," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the stillness. I looked at my mother, her face a mess of fear and confusion. "I choose transparency. I'm not choosing violence." I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't run. My footsteps were even and deliberate on the hardwood floor. I was halfway across the wide dark porch when the front door flew open behind me. "You're not going anywhere with that." Calvin's voice was a low growl. He lunged and grabbed the strap of my bag, yanking me back. The night air was suddenly filled with a loud, insistent electronic chirping. Beep, 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 beep. The AirTag, my trap. The sound was alien and disorienting in the quiet suburban street. Calvin froze, his hands still on my bag, his face a mask of confusion. And then a figure detached itself from the deep shadows of the large oak tree by the driveway. It was Eli. He was just a silhouette against the streetlights, but his presence was solid, immovable. He was holding his phone to his ear, his voice calm and clear. Yes, 911. I'd like to report an assault in progress at 142 Willow Creek Lane. Calvin dropped my bag like it was on fire. He stared at Eli, then at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. He had been outmaneuvered, exposed. Eli walked toward us, his phone still to his ear. I took a steadying breath. Tell them the situation has been de-escalated, I said, my voice shaking only slightly. Tell them I do not require an immediate police presence, but to please log the call. I was creating a record, not a scene. Calvin retreated back into the house, slamming the door shut. My mother came out onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself against a chill that wasn't in the air. Tears streamed down her face. Why? She sobbed, her voice cracking. Why are you doing this to us? Why are you trying to destroy this family? The old guilt tried to rise, but it was suffocated by a new hard certainty. I walked over to her, my heart aching for the woman she could have been, for the mother I wished I'd had. I'm not destroying the family, Mom, I said, my voice softer now, filled with a sorrow that was decades old. I'm protecting what's left of it. I'm protecting what Grandpa built. And I'm protecting you if you ever decide you want to leave the fear behind. She just shook her head, unable to hear me, lost in the storm Calvin had created around her. Later that night, back in the sterile quiet of my small apartment, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving a cold, clear-headed exhaustion. I was documenting the events of the evening for my lawyer when my phone buzzed with a notification. It wasn't a text. It was a security alert. Shed main door sensor opened. 11:47 p.m. My heart gave a single hard jolt. I immediately opened the live feed from the security app. The main shed floor was black on the infrared camera. Empty. But the alert was from the main door. Someone had opened it. I switched to the camera I'd placed inside the office, the one angled toward the inner cellar door. The feed was grainy, but the image was unmistakable. A single slender figure, their face obscured by a hoodie, slipping silently through the office and toward the cellar. It was Ava. I didn't call the police. I didn't panic. I watched the silhouette on my screen. A predator walking into a cage of her own making. I tapped the red button on the app. Record. I leaned back in my chair and watched. I let the chain of events unspool. Let the evidence gather itself. The day after the disastrous reconciliation dinner, Ava showed up at the shed. It was a move so brazen it almost defied logic. She pulled up in her white SUV, sunglasses perched on her head, carrying a cardboard tray with 2 lattes. Truce, she offered, her smile as bright and artificial as a plastic flower. I brought coffee. Figured we could actually talk. Maybe I can help you tag some of this junk for the HOA compliance guy. I looked at the lattes, then at her. My phone was in my pocket recording. I don't drink soy, Ava. But you can come in. I led her past the main floor. The rows of barrels standing silent guard. I saw her eyes dart around. Just a flicker, a micro-assessment of the space. She was looking for something, or more accurately checking on the scene of her crime. Wow, she said, letting out a low whistle. It's even dustier than I remember. You really have your work cut out for you, Lena. It's a process, I said, walking her into the small office. I've been sorting through everything. It's amazing what you find in old places. So much residue. I'd set it up perfectly. On the desk next to a stack of decoy files, I had a small handheld black light, the kind you use to check currency. You've got something on your hands, I said, feigning a helpful squint. Looks like grease from your car, maybe. Ava looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. What? No. Here, I said, picking up the black light. I'm using this to check the old labels for water damage, but it's great for seeing stains. Before she could protest, I clicked it on. The small purple beam shot out. I aimed it directly at her right hand, the one she'd used to try the cellar door. It lit up a sickening fluorescent green-yellow. The invisible UV paste glowed like neon paint, stark against her skin on her palm, her fingertips, and packed deep under her fingernails. She gasped and snatched her hand back, but it was too late. The evidence was literally glowing on her. Residue, I said, my voice flat. I turned off the light and put it down. It's all over the handle of the cellar door and on the lid of barrel 19A and on the filing cabinet lock. Funny, isn't it? Her face went pale, the practiced smile dissolving. I don't know what you're talking about. You planted that. Did I? I turned to the small laptop I had set up on the desk. Then maybe you can explain this. I hit the space bar. The screen flickered to life, showing the grainy infrared footage from 11:47 p.m. the previous night. It showed her, a slender figure in a hoodie slipping through the office. It showed her jiggling the handle of the cellar door, her body tensing with frustration when it didn't open. It showed her moving to the filing cabinet, trying the lock, and then it showed her walking to the front row of barrels, placing her hands on the lid of 19A as if checking its weight or seal. Ava watched the video, her reflection a ghostly image on the dark screen. The silence in the office was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the computer. When the clip ended, the screen went black, leaving us staring at ourselves. Explain, I said. It wasn't a request. She crumpled. It wasn't a dramatic wailing breakdown. It was a quiet, pathetic deflation. She sank into the dusty office chair, her shoulders hunching. He made me, she whispered, the words barely audible. He said he just needed one. Just one barrel. One barrel of what? Junk. He has this deal, she said, her voice rushing now, desperate to confess. These investors from Singapore. It's the only thing keeping the fund from collapsing. He promised them something unique. A gift, a piece of Rook Valley history. He said if he could just give them one barrel as a show of good faith, they'd sign. He said it would lock in the deal. So he knew. He'd known all along what Grandpa had. The scrap metal narrative was just a cover for a smash and grab. He'd been trying to steal a single barrel, a multi-million-dollar gift to save his fraudulent company. And he sent you to do it. I said it wasn't a question. He sent you to commit breaking and entering and felony theft so he could close his deal. You don't understand the pressure. Lena, she suddenly shrieked, the whisper gone, replaced by a raw childish panic. You have no idea. He controls everything. My apartment, my car, my job. It's all tied to the fund. If he goes down, I go down. I have nothing. She was right. I didn't understand. I had built my small life on my own, precisely to avoid this very kind of poisoned obligation. She had built hers on his, and the bill was coming due. I let her panic fill the room for a long cold minute. I let her feel the walls of the trap she was in. Then I offered her the key. So if he just needed a gift, I said, my voice cutting through her sobs, let's make sure the investors get the full package. They're business people. They'll appreciate the due diligence. She looked up, her face blotchy and confused. What? When they receive their gift barrel? I continued, ticking the points off on my fingers. I'll make sure it comes with a complete gift basket. A copy of the notarized theft report I'll be filing with the sheriff, A copy of the criminal complaint with your name on it as the primary suspect. I have you on camera after all. And a certified letter from my attorney to their legal department explaining that they are in receipt of stolen high-value assets which makes them party to a felony. I'm sure that will lock in the deal. The color drained from her face, leaving a waxy gray pallor. You wouldn't. He sent you here to destroy my entire future. Ava, to steal my inheritance. Why wouldn't I? She stared at me, the reality of her situation finally landing. She wasn't just in trouble with Calvin. She was in legal trouble with me. And unlike Calvin, I didn't trade in fear. I traded in facts. What do you want? She whispered. A way out? For me, which incidentally is also a way out for you. He keeps his files on a private server. Doesn't he? The Roe Heritage Fund files. She just stared. You're his pet, Ava. You do his creative accounting. You manage his private schedule. I'm sure you have the passwords. I want it all. Every spreadsheet, every wire transfer, every doctored invoice, every fake contract, everything you and he have used to build this house of cards. If I do that, he'll kill me. If you don't, I said, tapping the laptop screen, I'll bury you. I'll send this video to the DA and I'll name you in the civil suit I'm filing against Calvin for fraud and conversion. You'll be the star witness whether you want to be or not, and you'll have a criminal record before he even feels the pinch. Your pressure will be a 6x8 cell. I stood up and walked to the door of the office. Or you give me the files, everything. In exchange, I don't name you. I don't release the video. I don't mention your involvement to the press or the association. Calvin goes down. You walk away. You lose your car, but you keep your name. I left her there in the dusty office with the glowing evidence on her hands and her own face staring back at her from the black screen. I gave her 10 minutes. My phone buzzed with an email notification 9 minutes later. No subject, no body, just a single zipped attachment. Rocask.zip. It was the act of a terrified animal chewing off its own leg to escape a trap. I forwarded the file unopened directly to Hollis Searle. This is the internal file I mentioned. Please begin your analysis immediately. The report from Searle came back 48 hours later. It was beautiful. Ava hadn't just given me scraps. She'd given me the entire playbook. The Rocask folder was a digital ledger of Calvin's entire shadow operation. It contained spreadsheets meticulously detailing the real cost of the bulk juice he'd bought and the inflated price he'd sold it for under fake labels. It had the drafts of the fake contracts, the wire transfers to offshore accounts. And just as I'd suspected, the hub of it all was the Roe Heritage Fund. It wasn't a fund. It was a shell, a legal ghost created to launder the money, to pay for Ava's apartment, and to buy the silence of compliant consultants at places like North Lake Bray. Searle's team had already found the direct money trail. Calvin hadn't just been stealing from Grandpa Henry. He'd been stealing from the entire Rook Valley, diluting its reputation for his own gain. I had the knife. I had the motive. Now I needed the stage. I looked at the local events calendar, and there it was. In 3 weeks, the Rook Valley Harvest Gala, the single most important, most prestigious, most media-heavy event of the year. It was Calvin's home turf, the place where he played the part of the valley's benefactor, the man who had brought home the gold medal. It was perfect. I began drafting the invitations. They were elegant, printed on thick cream cardstock. They were for the unveiling of Project Phoenix, the lost heritage of Henry Whitford. I sent them by courier, one to the head of the Rook Valley Vineyard Association, one to the 3 critics I'd planned to invite to my private tasting, one to the top auction house in the state, one to the curator of the Rook Valley Wine Archive, one to Eli with a handwritten note. It's time. And the last one I sent by certified mail. Return receipt requested. To Mr. Calvin Roe the night before the certified letter was scheduled to arrive. My phone lit up with a text. It was my mother, Lena. I heard you're planning some event. Please, I'm begging you, don't make a scene. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. Calvin will change. Just let this go. I stared at the message, at the desperate, terrified plea from a woman I barely knew anymore. Calvin will change. She didn't mean he would change his ways. She meant his anger would change. It would escalate. It would find a new target. I closed my eyes. The old familiar fear that had kept me silent for a decade was a ghost in the room. But it wasn't mine. It was hers. I felt a profound cold sadness. My mother's fear was older than my memory. It was a part of her, a piece of her foundation, and I knew with absolute certainty that you can't build a new life on a rotten foundation. You have to tear it down. The invitation to Calvin was a declaration of war. The 3 weeks leading up to the Rook Valley Harvest Gala were a blur of strategic high-stakes maneuvering. This wasn't just a presentation. It was a legal and public relations battlefield, and I intended to control every inch of it. My first move was to reframe the narrative. This wasn't about me getting rich. It was about restoring a legacy. I met with my attorney and an escrow agent. We drafted a binding agreement. Upon the successful auction or licensing of the Phoenix assets, 30% of all gross proceeds would be irrevocably placed into an escrow account. I then filed the articles of incorporation for a new nonprofit, the Whitford Scholarship Fund, dedicated to providing grants for students in viticulture and agronomy at Rook Valley College. It was a clean philanthropic move. It made the fight about education and history, not just a sordid family squabble over money. It would also make Calvin's attempts to paint me as a greedy, vindictive liar look petty and self-serving. Next, I went on the offensive with intellectual property. I hired the best IP attorney in the state. I need to trademark a brand, I told her. Phoenix Whitford Block H. I provided my grandfather's notebook, the W. Phoenix seal designs, and the lab reports. I have reason to believe a third party, I didn't name Calvin or Karen, will attempt to lay claim to this brand. I need the filing expedited. She saw the documentation, the history, and the clear line of inheritance. She filed the trademark application that same day, creating an immediate time-stamped public claim of ownership. With the legal and financial structures firming up, I needed undeniable objective proof of the product itself. The lab report was scientific, but the wine world ran on sensory perception. It ran on taste. Eli and I orchestrated a small secret blind tasting. We didn't invite critics yet. We invited scientists. I hired 3 independent sensory experts, 2 from a university lab and 1 a former industry analyst. They were told only that they were evaluating a flight of undisclosed heritage wines. They signed robust NDAs. Eli, with the steady hands of a surgeon, created a test blend. He took samples from 3 of the most pristine barrels of what the notebook called Field Blend 4. He didn't touch the barrel Ava had tried to access, nor any that showed the slightest sign of compromise. He blended them, let the wine breathe for a precise amount of time, and poured. I watched their faces as they tasted. They swirled, sniffed, and scribbled notes. They didn't speak. Their professionalism was absolute. The silence was deafening. Finally, the lead analyst, a woman with a formidable reputation, set down her glass. "I cannot with any certainty tell you what this is," she said, her voice filled with a stunned curiosity. "But it's alive. The structure is magnificent. It has notes I haven't encountered outside of pre-war European texts. Where did this come from? Your report will validate its quality." "That's all I need for now," I replied. I had my third-party validation. The science was backed by the palate. Now I had to build the story for the gala. This was my exhibit. I commissioned a series of large museum-quality display boards. Board 1. The map, a high-resolution enlargement of my grandfather's shed map, the DOI Rook Valley and Block H foxglove cuttings annotations highlighted. Board 2. The proof, a simplified visual timeline, the Rook Valley College Lab Report Summary, the 92% DNA match, and the sensory panel's official tasting notes, which they'd provided stripped of their names but showing their conclusions. Board 3, The Legacy, a photo of my grandfather's leather notebook open to the Project Phoenix page alongside a magnified image of the W Phoenix seal. Board 4, The Chain of Custody, a flowchart showing the legal path, my inheritance, the LLC formation, the new locks, the witnessed inventory, the bonded insurance. It was a wall of irrefutable facts. It told a story of preservation and discovery, not of family conflict. The business side had to be ready. I couldn't just present a discovery. I had to present a product. I took a meeting with Red Lantern Imports, a high-end wine boutique distributor known for handling rare and exclusive allocations. I laid out the entire case, the lab reports, the sensory notes. "This is a ghost," the acquisitions manager said, his eyes wide. "This is a unicorn. We want it," I said. "And you'll have it on one condition." My lawyer had drafted the agreement. Red Lantern Imports would get exclusive first rights to distribution contingent upon Stratton Shed LLC winning any and all legal challenges to its ownership of the brand and assets. It was another brilliant move. It didn't just give me a distributor. It gave me a powerful, wealthy business partner who now had a vested financial interest in me, winning any fight Calvin or Karen might start. With all the pieces in place, I turned to the performance itself. I wrote my speech. I practiced it in my apartment, in my car, in the shower. I timed it to the second. The narrative was tight. It was not about a stepfather's abuse or a sister's betrayal. It was about a promise. A promise to a grandfather that his work was not junk. It was about the integrity of the valley, about the difference between a real legacy and a fake reputation. I said the words over and over, stripping them of any trembling emotional qualifier until they were as hard and clear as glass. 3 days before the gala, it was time to light the fuse. My attorney sent the notice of claim via a process server to Calvin's office. It was a formal legal document, not a lawsuit but the step before one. It ordered him to cease and desist all claims, verbal or otherwise, on the assets of the Whitford estate and the Phoenix Whitford Block H trademark, and provided notice of a future claim for damages related to past fraudulent conversion of assets from the Roe Heritage Fund. I didn't have to wait long. 24 hours later, a text came through from an unknown number. "He's furious. He's screaming. He's telling everyone you're a thief and you've lost your mind. Be careful. This is not a game. Eva." She was terrified, but she had also, in her own way, confirmed my strike had hit the target. He wasn't just angry. He was loud. He was reacting, which meant he was on the defensive. The threat was real. My mother's words, "You don't know what he's like," echoed in my head. I called a private security firm, the one the high-end vineyards used for their events. I hired 2 off-duty officers, one for the gala to be stationed by my exhibit. The other I hired for the shed. I wasn't going to let him destroy the evidence while I was on stage. I also had Eli help me install a new high-strength steel bar on the inside of the main shed door. It was now a fortress. I bought one more piece of insurance, a micro body cam the size of a shirt button. I tested it, practiced turning it on and off by feel alone in my pocket. If Calvin or Karen or anyone else tried to confront me, intimidate me, or assault me, I wouldn't just be recording audio. I would have video, the final act. I picked up my phone. I stared at my mother's contact name for a long time. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. I was about to detonate the foundations of her entire life, but she deserved one last chance to get out of the blast radius. I called. She picked up on the 4th ring, her voice small and wary. "Lena." "Mom," I said, my voice gentle, devoid of accusation. "I'm not going to argue. I want to invite you to the gala as my guest. I have a seat for you at my table." "Lena." "I can't." "Calvin." "I'm not asking you to choose him or me," I interrupted. "I'm asking you to choose the truth." Come early. Come to the conservatory at 6 before anyone else gets there. Let me just show you. Let me show you what Grandpa left. Let me show you what I found. No speeches, no crowds, just you and me and the truth from the beginning. After that, you can do whatever you want. I could hear her shallow breathing on the other end of the line, the sound of a lifetime of fear warring with a flicker of curiosity. 6 o'clock, she whispered and hung up. I didn't know if she would come, but the invitation was sent. The stage was set. The exhibits were ready. The security was in place. Every legal trap was laid. I put on the dress I'd bought, a simple, severe dark blue sheath, professional, unadorned armor. I clipped the micro camera to the inside of my blazer. It was time. The Rook Valley Conservatory was a cathedral of glass and light, a stunning, glittering bubble of wealth and influence. The air hummed with the sound of a string quartet and the high-pitched clinking of expensive crystal. It smelled of hothouse lilies, beeswax, and the subtle, sharp perfume of money. I stood in my designated alcove. My setup was an island of stark academic truth in a sea of opulent PR. The 4 large exhibit boards formed a 3-walled fortress, and in the center, not on a dusty pallet but on a pedestal of dark polished wood, sat one of the 1996 barrels. Eli and I had cleaned it, sanded the oxidized metal hoops until they shone, and affixed a single tamper-proof seal of wax stamped with the W Phoenix. In front of it, a simple, elegant sign on a brass stand read, "The Whitford Phoenix, not for pouring." It was a statement of profound value, a relic, not a refreshment. My private security guard, a broad man in a perfectly tailored suit named Marcus, stood 10 feet away, his back to me, observing the room. He looked like every other high-powered guest except for the small earpiece and the fact that his eyes never stopped moving. I discreetly touched the button on my blazer. The body cam was active, this tiny lens capturing the room. I scanned the crowd and I saw her, my mother. She had come. She wasn't at the sponsors' table with Calvin, who was holding court by the massive ice sculpture. She was at a small table in the far back near an emergency exit. Alone, she looked tiny, a ghost in a beige dress, clutching her purse, her eyes wide and terrified. She had come to watch the execution, though she wasn't sure who was the condemned. The main event of the gala began, the annual State of the Valley tasting. A panel of 3 esteemed judges sat on the main stage. The MC, a slick local news personality, guided them through the flight. And now our final tasting, Sample C, submitted in our new heritage category. I had done it. I had submitted the Phoenix blend Eli and I had bottled. It was the ultimate gamble. The lead judge, a formidable woman from a national wine publication, swirled the deep ruby liquid in her glass. She raised it to her nose, her eyes closing. She tasted it. The entire room was silent. She set the glass down and simply stared at it for a long moment. "I am astonished," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "The structure on this wine is impossible. It's elegant. It has tertiary notes of cured leather and dried earth. But the fruit is still alive. This is without a doubt a piece of living history." The crowd burst into applause. The MC reading from his card scanned the room. The judges' notes are unanimous. Sample C is the surprise of the night. And now to present the history of this remarkable wine from Stratton Shed LLCMS. Lena Stratton. It was my cue. A spotlight hit me. I saw Calvin at his table freeze, his glass halfway to his mouth. His face was a mask of utter confusion, the blood draining from it. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking, the sound echoing in the sudden hush. I stepped up to the podium. "Good evening," I said. My voice was steady, amplified, and cold. "You just tasted Sample C. Its true name is the Phoenix, and it was blended from barrels my grandfather Henry Whitford sealed in 1996. The first slide clicked on behind me. It was the high-resolution image of the cellar map. This is its birthplace, Block H. Ridgeway North Bench. The whispers started. A low snake-like hiss spreading through the conservatory. I didn't give them time to build. I was in command. Next slide. The 1987 journal entry. My grandfather's notes on the foxglove cuttings. Next slide. The Rook Valley College DNA report. The 92% match highlighted in red. Next slide. The independent sensory panel's chemical analysis confirming its quality. Next slide. The chain of custody. A photo of the old rusted lock. A photo of the new heavy-duty hasp. A photo of the notarized seals. The room was buzzing now. The atmosphere had changed from polite celebration to a tense electric silence. And then the explosion. Fraud! The voice was a roar. Calvin was on his feet, his chair screeching back. He was stalking toward the stage, his face purple with rage, his finger jabbing at me. She's a liar, a vindictive, pathological liar. That is my family's property. My wine. This is slander. He was playing his part. The outraged patriarch. The man of influence defending his good name. The guests were frozen. 100 pairs of eyes darting between us. I didn't even look at him. I held my ground at the podium. I glanced at the AV technician. Next slide, please. The massive screen behind me was filled with a crystal-clear image of the 1998 contract. The one granting the Roe Heritage Fund exclusive rights to the foxglove. He's right, I said, my voice cutting through his tirade. A claim was made on this wine. I used a laser pointer. Its red dot landing on the blank signature line at the bottom of the document. This is the family claim, a contract my grandfather saw for what it was, and he never signed it. A collective gasp went through the room. He knew his legacy was in danger, I said. He knew who he was dealing with. Lies, Calvin screamed. He was senile. He agreed to it. I'll sue you into the gutter. Next slide. The screen changed again. It was the text of the 2003 letter from Eli Navarro. I read it aloud. Warning. Fake labels. Doctored blends. North Lake Bray is signing off on anything for a price. I lowered the laser pointer. A warning about the very fund that tried to seize my grandfather's assets. A warning about the fund that won the gold medal 5 years ago with a chemical blend of sugar and bulk juice. The silence that followed was a vacuum. Calvin stopped, his mouth open. The head of the Vineyard Association, a stoic man named Thorne, stood up. Mister. Oh, that is a very serious allegation. I must ask you to. It's all slander. She has no proof, Calvin bellowed, but his voice was shaking. And then the real performance began. A figure was moving from Calvin's table. It wasn't him. It was Ava. She was white as chalk, her hands shaking so violently she could barely walk. She looked like she was going to be sick. In her hand she held a small silver USB drive. She didn't look at Calvin. She didn't look at me. She walked zombie-like past my security guard who had moved to the front of the stage. She stopped at the steps, her whole body convulsing with a single dry sob. She held up the drive. It's all there, she whispered, her voice cracking, but it was just loud enough for the podium mic to catch it. Rocask, the spreadsheets, the wire transfers, the real ones. It's all true. She dropped the USB drive onto the top step as if it were burning her. Then she turned and ran, stumbling over her own gown, pushing through the stunned guests and vanishing out the side door. The room was dead silent, utterly. Calvin was frozen, his face a grotesque mask of shock and pure unadulterated hatred. He had been gutted publicly by his own daughter. The press, who had been frozen, erupted. A dozen camera flashes went off at once, capturing his expression of ruin. I let the silence hang. I let them all look at him. Then I turned my head. I looked past the stage, past the flashing lights to the small dark table in the back. My mother was still there. She was staring at me, her hands no longer covering her mouth but pressed against her chest. Her face was a ruin of tears, but her eyes were open. They were seeing it. All of it. Our eyes locked. I leaned into the microphone. I didn't speak to the crowd. I spoke to her. I choose truth. Before Calvin could even find his voice to deny it, a new player took the stage. A man in an impeccable tuxedo who had been sitting at the table I'd reserved for the auction house stepped smoothly into the aisle. "A fascinating and historic presentation," he said, his voice as polished and loud as a trumpet. "We at Sotheby's are of course saddened by this dispute. However, we believe in the market." He turned to the crowd, now a stunned, rapt audience. "Therefore, we are prepared to announce tonight that we will be opening the bidding for the single Phoenix barrel, as well as all futures on the verified foxglove cuttings. Given the legal ambiguity, 100% of the proceeds will be held in a bonded escrow account to be released only upon a final civil judgment or a mutually signed settlement. We will open the bidding at $200,000. It was a masterstroke. He had legitimized my wine, validated my claim, and announced its value to the entire world, all while neatly sidestepping the family drama and Karen Voss's HOA complaints. The room exploded, not with anger but with commerce. Bidders were on their feet yelling to their partners. Reporters were shouting questions. And from the front row I heard the lead judge's voice clear as a bell. "My God, it's real. Whitford's Phoenix is real." That was the moment Calvin's leash snapped. The legal talk, the money, the public ruin. It was too much. He didn't yell. He lunged. He charged the stage. His eyes fixed on me. His hands clawed. "You bitch," he snarled. "You've ruined me." He never made it. Marcus, my guard, stepped in front of him. It wasn't violent. It was simply a collision with an immovable object. Marcus's hand came up, palm out, and met Calvin's chest, stopping his momentum instantly. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice calm and firm, "I'm going to have to ask you to step back." Another gala security guard was there in a second. They each took an arm. Calvin was struggling, but he was trapped. They began to escort him, red-faced and sputtering, toward the main exit, past all the phones and cameras capturing his final pathetic humiliation. The conservatory was in chaos. The auctioneer was trying to bring order. The press was snapping photos. I stepped back to the microphone and the noise once again quieted. I looked at the barrel standing under the spotlight, a silent witness. "Tonight," I said, my voice ringing out clear and final over the dying chaos. This was not about revenge. This was about restoring the name of a wine. The aftermath of the gala was not chaos. It was a cold, precise, high-pressure shift in barometric pressure. The scandal had detonated, and now, in the stunned silence of the following morning, the players moved to their corners. Lawyers first. We were in my attorney's conference room by 8 a.m. Calvin wasn't there. Of course he sent his lawyer, a sharp, exhausted-looking man who clearly hadn't slept. My team, my attorney, and a steely Mr. Searle from the forensic accounting firm sat opposite him. "Mr. Rowe is prepared to contest your client's claims to the estate," his lawyer began, shuffling papers. It was a weak, obligatory opening. My attorney didn't even blink. "Then we will be delighted to forward the full contents of the Rocask file to the district attorney by noon, along with the full unedited video of Ms. Ava Rowe's public confession and the security footage of her attempted theft from the shed." The color drained from the lawyer's face. He knew he'd seen the file. We weren't negotiating. We were dictating terms. "What?" he said, his voice flat. "Does your client want a temporary agreement?" My attorney said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. "One Mr. Rowe immediately and publicly withdraws all claims on the Whitford estate, the land, and the contents of the shed. 2. All proceeds from any auction or sale starting with last night's announced auction will be placed in the bonded escrow account pending a final civil judgment. 3. In exchange for this and only this, Ms. Stratton will agree not to pursue criminal charges against Ava Rowe for breaking and entering and conspiracy to commit theft. I watched him read it. I had been specific. Calvin was not off the hook for his own crimes, the fraud, the wire transfers, only Ava. It was the one single calculated piece of leverage I had over her and by extension him. He would have to sign to save his daughter from immediate prosecution. He made a call. I heard muffled, furious, strangled sounds from the other end. He came back to the table, his face grim. He signs, he said. Send me the wire information for the escrow. The first domino had fallen. As I walked out of the office, my phone rang. It was the general counsel for the Rook Valley Reserve, the vineyard that had emailed me days before. Ms. Stratton. The voice was crisp. All business. A remarkable presentation last night. We saw the auction house's announcement. We are not interested in a single barrel. We are interested in the future. We are prepared to offer a 7-figure 20-year licensing deal for the exclusive rights to the foxglove genetic material, contingent of course on you proving a viable continuous source for the cuttings. I hung up, the number 7 figures ringing in my ears. The barrels were the past. The land was the future. The war was not over. I called Eli. I'll meet you at Block H in 10. The overgrown plot of land looked different now. It wasn't an abandoned field. It was a vault. The late October sun was weak, but the air was clear. He told me, Eli said, walking beside me, his eyes scanning the ground, that the blight never got the roots. He said he'd protected them, that he'd find a way. We walked through the knee-high dead weeds. It looked like a graveyard of vines, gnarled leafless sticks poking from the dry soil. But Eli knelt, pulling out a cultivator. He dug at the base of one of the thick, seemingly dead trunks. He used 110R rootstock, he murmured, his fingers deep in the soil. Tough, drought-resistant. He knew this bench was dry. Eli stopped. His fingers hit something. It wasn't a rock. He pulled it out. It was a 6-inch spike of rebar. The top half rusted, the bottom half, protected by the soil, still dark. And welded onto the head of it was a small, unmistakable custom-cut piece of steel. A W. My breath caught. It was a marker. A private sign from my grandfather. Hidden beneath the earth. A breadcrumb. We moved to the next vine and the next. Each one had a spike. He had mapped his surviving vines, his secret garden, and hidden them in plain sight. I immediately called the Rook Valley College lab. This is Lena Stratton. I need your field team back at the Ridgeway property. Bring your root sampling kits. We found the mother vines. They were there within an hour. The same sense of hushed reverence as before. This time they weren't just taking wood. They were taking core samples from the living rootstock deep underground. The preliminary field test run from a mobile DNA sequencer in their van came back in 20 minutes. The lead technician looked at me, his eyes wide behind his glasses. It's a 99.7% match, he said. It's foxglove. It's pure. My God. Ms. Stratton, you have the source. My next move was to protect that source. I was at Rook Valley College the following morning in the Dean of Agriculture's office. I want to fund a conservation nursery, I said, sliding the Articles of Incorporation for the Whitford Scholarship Fund across the desk. And I want to staff it with your best postgrad students. Stratton Shed LLC will grant the college an exclusive non-commercial license to propagate the foxglove cuttings for research and conservation. In return, the college will manage the project, ensuring the genetic line is never compromised. The dean, seeing the promise of a massive endowment and a history-making project, signed the contract before my coffee was cold. The future of the foxglove was now entwined with the academic and philanthropic integrity of the valley. The legal screws tightened. My lawyer called, his voice grimly satisfied. The draft settlement is ready to send to Calvin's counsel. It's not a request, Lena. It's an execution. The terms were brutal and exact, based entirely on the Rocask files. 1. Calvin Rowe would pay full audited reimbursement for the market value of all fraudulent wine sold under the gold medal label. 2. He would pay punitive damages to Stratton Shed LLC for the unauthorized attempted sale and dilution of the Whitford brand. 3. He would immediately and forever cease and desist from using the Whitford name in any business or personal capacity. It was a legal gag order. An eraser. He wouldn't just lose the money. He would lose the fake identity he had built on my grandfather's name. The family fallout was quiet, almost sterile. An email appeared in my inbox. It was from Ava. Lena, I know I don't deserve it, but I have nothing. Calvin, he's done. I'm good with numbers. I saw you started a scholarship fund. Maybe I could help. I'd work for free. I read the message. I saw the desperation, the final pathetic attempt to latch on to the new power source. I archived the email. I did not reply. A week later, I got a call from my aunt, my mother's sister. Loretta's here, she said simply. She left him the night of the gala. She packed a bag and she's been here ever since. She's not good, Lena, but she's safe. She started seeing a therapist, a trauma specialist. I said, that's good, and thanked her for letting me know. I did not go to see her. The wound was too deep, the air still too toxic. Her leaving was her own first step, one she had to take alone. The hype machine meanwhile had engaged. The auction house issued a formal press release. The Phoenix Barrel, a lost legend of Rook Valley to be auctioned at autumnal reserve sale. The release mentioned the academic partnership with Rook Valley College, the Whitford Scholarship Fund, and the unprecedented historical significance. Analysts were quoted projecting the single barrel would shatter every existing record for an American wine. The scandal of the gala was being expertly scrubbed, polished into a legend of discovery and restoration. I decided to help build that legend. I hand-selected 10 people, the most influential wine collectors in the country, the most powerful critics, and the CEO of Red Lantern Imports. I invited them one by one for a private 30-minute tour of the shed. They had to sign multi-page NDAs just to enter. When they arrived, they weren't met with a dusty shed. I had Eli and a team clean the cellar. We installed subtle museum-quality uplighting. The barrels sat in neat silent rows, the air cold and smelling of oak and history. It was a velvet rope experience. They couldn't taste. They could only look. They could smell. They could feel the weight of the discovery. By the time they left, they weren't just potential buyers. They were apostles spreading the myth of the Phoenix to their exclusive circles. The night before the auction, Eli and I stood in the silent shed. The lights low. The barrel that was to be sold tomorrow was gone, already in a climate-controlled vault at the auction house. It's a lot, he said quietly, looking at the empty space where it had been. You did it, Lena. We did it, I corrected. He looked at me, his gaze searching. When you win tomorrow, when this is all over, what are you going to do? I thought for a moment, the cold, still air filling my lungs. I looked at the heavy cellar door, the door Ava had tried to open. The door Calvin had tried to breach. I'm going to open the cellar, I said. I'm going to bring this wine and this story into the light, but I am never, ever opening the door to violence again. He nodded, understanding completely. After he left, I stayed. I sat in the small, clean office, a single lamp illuminating my notes. I was preparing my final statement for the auction. I wouldn't be speaking to a room of enemies. I'd be speaking to a room of investors, historians, and my new partners. The tone had to be perfect. Not triumph, not revenge, but stewardship. I picked up my pen and began to write, honing the final perfect closing line. The auction room was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was a vacuum, a place where sound went to die, replaced by a tension so thick it felt like the pressure deep in a wine cave. The only voice was the auctioneer's, a smooth rhythmic cadence that was hypnotic and brutal. 1 million on the phone, he chanted, his polished gavel held aloft. Do I hear 1.1? 1.1 from the gentleman in the back. 1.2 from the Geneva Consortium. 1.22. The numbers on the massive digital screen behind him climbed. Each new figure an electric shock to the silent room. The bidding had blown past the initial $500,000 estimate in the first 90 seconds. Now it was a bare-knuckle brawl between two titans. A man in the back of the room rumored to be representing a secretive American tech billionaire, and the disembodied voice of the Geneva Consortium on the phone line. I wasn't watching the screen. I was watching my mother. She sat at my table a few seats away, and her hands were clenched so tightly on the arms of her chair that her knuckles were white. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the display board to the left of the stage, the one with the simple elegant script. Phoenix Whitford, Lot 001. She wasn't watching the money. She was watching her father's name be reborn in fire. 1.5 million, the auctioneer said, the room letting out a collective soft gasp. A new record for a single barrel of New World wine. The bid is with Geneva, selling at 1,500,000. The price had surpassed history. It had become mythology. And that's when he appeared. A commotion at the back of the room. A flash of anger. The two security guards I had hired, the same firm from the gala, moved with fluid-calm precision, blocking the main entrance. It was Calvin. He wasn't dressed for an auction. He looked disheveled, his face blotchy, his eyes wild with a cornered animal's fury. That's mine, he screamed, his voice raw and cracking. She stole it from me. It's mine. The auctioneer paused, his professionalism a mask of perfect calm. One of the guards spoke into his wrist. Sir, you are not on the guest list. You need to leave. Calvin pushed against them. An act of pathetic futile rage. His voice rose to a guttural shriek that, by some fluke of acoustics and an open microphone, was picked up and broadcast through the room's pristine sound system. I will destroy you, he bellowed, the words echoing with digital clarity. I will burn you to the ground. The entire room turned. They saw him, a man unhinged, a ghost at the feast, ranting from outside the gates of power. The American bidder in the back of the room just shook his head slowly, a faint pitying smile on his lips. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Selling for 1.5 million. Going once. This was it. The moment. I raised my hand. Not to bid. Just a single clear raised hand. The auctioneer, a master of his craft, saw it instantly. He knew it wasn't a bid. It was a signal. He had been briefed. The seller has requested a 30-second pause, he announced, his voice betraying nothing. The clock is stopped. 100 heads swiveled to face me. I felt the weight of their gaze, their curiosity, their confusion. I didn't look at them. I nodded to the AV technician at the side of the room. The massive screen behind the auctioneer, the one displaying the record-breaking bid, went black. For a second there was nothing. And then a new image flickered to life. It wasn't a document. It was a video, shaky, shot on a phone in what looked like a dark wood-paneled office. It was Calvin. He was holding a glass of whiskey, leaning back in his leather chair, laughing. He was talking to someone off camera. The fools on the awards panel. They wouldn't know terroir from turpentine. You just have to give them what they want. A little glycerol for the mouthfeel, a touch of mega purple for the color, and a half-pound of sugar per gallon to smooth out the finish. They lap it up every time. Called our gold medal winner a masterpiece of Rook Valley soil. I made that masterpiece in a stainless steel tank with a sack of domino sugar. He took a triumphant swig of his whiskey and winked at the person holding the phone. The secret to this business isn't making wine. It's telling stories. The video ended. The screen went black again. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a physical thing, a crushing weight. No one moved. No one breathed. Every person in that room, the bidders, the collectors, the critics, had just heard the man who had represented their valley confess to the ultimate sin. He hadn't just faked a wine. He had mocked them all. I saw the head of the Rook Valley Vineyard Association sitting in the front row slowly, deliberately nod his head at the auctioneer, a silent confirmation. Proceed. The auctioneer raised his gavel. His voice when he spoke was different. It was hard like stone. We have 1,500,000. Do I hear 1.6? The American bidder in the back raised his paddle without hesitation. 2 million, he said, his voice clear and strong. The man on the phone with the Geneva Consortium conferred for a moment, then shook his head. It was over. The auctioneer didn't drag it out. 2 million, he said. The gavel rose. Sold. The hammer came down with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. It echoed through the dead silent room, and then the screen behind him flashed confirming the transaction. 100% of proceeds to be held in escrow for Stratton Shed LLC. And beneath it a second line, as per my legal agreement with the auction house. All intellectual property and future propagation rights for the foxglove varietal remain the exclusive property of Stratton Shed LLC. Total victory. Clean. Absolute. I didn't watch the crowd. I turned to my mother. She was crying. Not the racking sobs of grief but silent streaming tears. Her face a mask of profound heartbreaking relief. It's over. Mom. I whispered. No more junk. Just his name. She reached out and her hand found mine. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She just nodded, the tears falling freely. A quiet final letting go. My lawyer appeared at my side, a slim file folder in his hand. He didn't say a word. He just opened it and laid the document in front of me. It was the settlement agreement. Calvin's signature was on the last page. A spidery defeated scroll. He had relinquished all claims. He had accepted the restraining order. He was gone. The auctioneer was speaking again, his professional voice returning. And now a few words from the steward of this historic collection, Miss Lena Stratton. I stood up. I walked to the podium. The room was a blur of faces, but they were all looking at me. Not with pity but with a kind of stunned respect. Thank you, I began, my voice clear and steady. My grandfather Henry Whitford never got to see this day. When he died his legacy was dismissed as a shed full of junk. I paused, letting the word hang in the expensive air. But he didn't leave behind junk. He left a promise. He left a story in the soil. And he left me a key. Tonight is not about the price of a barrel of wine. It's about the value of that promise. This has been the story of a granddaughter keeping a promise to her grandfather. And it's been the story of a woman who decided to stop being silent. I looked out at the sea of faces and then it started. A single person in the front row stood up and started clapping. Then another and another. Within seconds the entire room was on its feet. The sound of their applause, a thundering wave that washed over me. It wasn't for the drama. It wasn't for the tragedy. It was for the quiet, unshakable integrity of the legacy that had refused to die. The house lights began to dim, leaving the stage in a single warm spotlight. The sound of the final gavel, the roar of the applause, the flash of a dozen cameras, it all swirled around me. I walked off the stage, past the display, to the single barrel that had started it all. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old rust-pocked iron key my grandfather had left me. I placed my hand on the cool oak of the barrel head, and with a final quiet click I turned the key in a lock that no one else would ever open again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear from you all and share our thoughts. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, and if you'd like to support the channel even more, hit that button to help the story be heard by more people.